a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Nothing warms the spirit or the soul like a fresh brewed cup of coffee. It's not really brewed because that's not a good way to make coffee. Boiling coffee after it's coffee is one of the worst things you can do. We still call it brewing, and they're still called beans. The best coffee for your soul and the universe can only be found at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, 4501 McPherson, here in Laredo. You can also order coffee and have it delivered to your front door. No having to get dressed or drive around. OrganicManCoffeeTrike.shop. Coffee is good for your soul. The soul, soul, is the spiritual or immaterial part of the human being or animal, regarded as sometimes being immortal. Soul, SOLE, is the part of the undersurface of a person's foot. Soul, SOAL, is an obsolete form of a fish known as a sole. It's also a word for a dirty pond. Sole, SOWL, is a dainty piece of food that you eat with a piece of bread. I wonder why the folks that were naming things couldn't come up with some different names for these items. It's not so much that they're spelled different, it's that they sound the same. Kind of like there, and there. There over there with their things. Drives me nuts trying to remember which one is which. Communicating is hard enough sometimes without running the gambit of asking a person if their foot has been saved. The soul is the immaterial, non corporeal aspect or essence of a living being. It is believed to exist apart from the material world. The 3 main theories that describe the relationship between the soul and the body are interactionism, parallelism, and epiphenomenalism. God, who comes up with these words? Epiphenomenalism. Yeah, somebody was trying to earn extra credits. Interactionism or interactionist dualism is the theory in the philosophy of mind which holds that matter and mind are 2 distinct and independent substances that exert causal effects on one another. Parallelism is the idea that mental and body events are perfectly coordinated without any causal interaction between them. Epiphenomenalism holds that subjective mental events are completely dependent for their existence on corresponding physical and biochemical events within the human body. If you understand all that, put a comment in the video and explain it back to me. Anthropologists and psychologists have found that most humans are inclined to believe in the existence of the soul and that they have cross cultural distinctions between soul and body. The soul has been the central area of interest in philosophy since ancient times. Socrates envisioned the soul to possess a rational faculty, its practice being man's most godly activity. Plato believed the soul to be a person's real self, an immaterial and immortal dweller of our lives that continues and thinks even after death. Aristotle sketched out the soul as the first actuality of a naturally organized body, form and matter, arrangement allowing natural beings to aspire to full actualization. Medieval philosophers expanded upon these classic foundations. Ibn Sina distinguished between the soul and the spirit, arguing that the soul's immortality follows from its nature rather than serving as a purposeful fulfillment. Thomas Aquinas understood the soul as the first actuality of the living body, but maintained that could exist without a body since it has operations independent of corporeal organs. During the Age of Enlightenment, Immanuel Kant defined the soul as the I in the most technical sense, holding that we can prove that all properties and actions of the soul cannot be recognized from mortality. Some of those folks had a way of speaking that made me wonder if they were trying to explain things or impress people. Different religions conceptualize the soul in different ways. Buddhism generally teaches the non existence of a permanent self, contrasting with Christianity's belief in an eternal soul that experiences death as a transition to God's presence in heaven. Hinduism views the soul as identical to Brahman in some traditions, while Islam uses two terms, the ruh and the nafs, to distinguish between the divine spirit and a person's disposition. Jainism considers the soul to be an eternal but changing form until it is liberated, while Judaism employs multiple terms such as the nephesh and the neshama to refer to the soul. Sikhism regards the soul as part of God. Shamanism often embraces the soul's dualism with body souls and free souls, while Taoism recognizes dual soul types, Hun and Pa. Where did the soul come from? In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word nephesh is often translated as soul, though its meaning extends beyond the modern understanding. It encompasses life, breath, and the very essence of being. Genesis 2:7 provides a foundational text describing how God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, making him a living being. This is nothing like what Dr. Frankenstein does in his attempt at making man. Frankenstein uses a bolt of lightning instead of just a breath of air. If lightning was actually needed, it would sure make the delivery room a lot more exciting. Many people all over the planet believe in a god or gods depending on how they grew up. The one consistency is everyone has some kind of a spark that connects them to the heavens and keeps them alive. There are those unfortunates who don't believe in God, the Bible, or folks having a soul. That whole Big Bang theory, that to me is very much a bunch of atheists clutching at straws. There was absolutely nothing. And then, bang, everything exploded into being just like that. The cosmologists need to talk to the mathematicians about this idea. You can't add zero to zero and come up with billions, unless you're a politician. Political math lets you get away with multiplying anything by nothing and coming up with a lot. There was nothing followed by everything all at once. What were those boys in the white lab coats drinking? They will say anything to avoid saying that maybe God did it. They believe this is it. You're born, you live, and you die. No reincarnation, no heaven, no hell. Well, I'll bet they pray secretly when none of their scientificing buddies are around. They pray there is no hell. I believe that they believe this way so they don't have to pay attention to things like, oh, say, the Ten Commandments. All the nasty things people do as they pursue their dreams of owning a big house and a fancy car and all the other things that you don't really need, but they want to impress people that they don't even know. It goes against a lot of the things that we should be doing. Now, there is nothing wrong with being rich. It's how you get there that is the problem. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. I wish people would get their sayings right. Of course, the people that always say the money is the root of all evil are usually the people that don't have any. According to some, early human beings recognized the difference between what is alive and what is dead. This was the distinction that the idea of the soul was originally designed to express. The soul was life essence, and as such it was regarded as something that leaves the body at death. As indicated by a variety of Indo European words for the soul, such as the Sanskrit Atman and the Greek psyche. It was often identified with breath. It was not so much immaterial as it was a finer, attenuated form of matter. I started to look into the whole thing about how much the soul weighed, and I got tied up in a whole bunch of other things. So I'm not going to get into that. But somebody actually did weigh a body before and after death, and there was a bit of a difference in weight. As thinking about these issues progressed, a variety of functions were assigned to the soul, which gradually came to be conceived of as a kind of container in which the functions resided. The soul was what humans thought and feelings were in, and it was itself each person's inner reality. This idea of inwardness survives even today. The soul was considered a distinct individual entity, not unlike an organ of the body, but also very different because its location in the body could not be found. In ancient Greece, the idea of the soul received its first major philosophical account in Plato's tripartite theory of the soul as considering of reason, spirit, and appetite. Plato was the first great philosophical exponent of the soul in the West. He depicted its rational components as the ruler overseeing the jumble of constantly changing and often conflicting states that reach human awareness through perception and become objects of human attachments through desire. You don't want something with your body, you want it with your soul. Aristotle considered the soul in terms of function rather than substance. When it comes to cognition, he spoke of it in ways that suggest a very different view. Unlike Plato, Aristotle understood perception as a form of knowledge of the surrounding world, and he spoke of it as the presence in the soul of the forms of subjects that are said to perceive. Such forms are there without their matter. This was another of the causes of particular entities, and so perception had to be understood as rather mysterious transfer of the object's form to the perceiver's soul. A second turning point came in the modern period when Rene Descartes pursued what was later called the way of ideas as a means of working out the skeptical possibilities inherent in the models of minds that they had inherited from antiquity. They were followed by others who tried to reconstruct the concept of mind on a very different basis. A third such juncture, which occurred in the 19th century, amounted to a full blown crisis in humankind's understanding of itself. The more they thought they knew, the more complicated and unknowable things became. People of all religions and spiritual paths believe that we have souls. Uh, where does our soul come from? Is it eternal? Does it live on after death? Has it always existed, or does it come into existence at a specific time? And if it does have a starting point, when does it become eternal and live on forever, if at all? The ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who lived 4 centuries before Christ, was among those who believed that the soul existed forever. He also believed that souls pass from one body to another, a process known in Greece as metaphysicism, more popularly known today as reincarnation. Aristotle said the soul did not always exist. He said it comes from our fathers. Aristotle left the door open to the possibility that the soul lives on after death, but he separated it from the physical body. He rejected the idea that a soul could enter another body. Early Christian theologians added a third theory. God newly creates each soul and infuses it into the body, either at conception or at birth. This theory is known as creationism. This is the belief held in the Catholic and Orthodox Christianity and in some Protestant churches. The idea that the soul comes from one or both parents, which is it holds into some Protestant churches, is known in Christian circles as traducianism. Even among Christians, the debate about the origins of the soul go back almost to the beginning of Christianity, mostly between the creationists and the traducianists. Many Christians reject reincarnation. Personally, I believe in it because I've seen way too many examples of people with memories from past lives. Emanuel Schwendenberg, who was born in 1688, largely adopted and expanded upon Aristotle's views, which Christians would classify as Traducian. Swedenborg also included an element of creationism in his theory, saying that all things came from God and are created by God, including the human soul. Swedenborg believed during his early scientific period the soul was a sort of a spiritual fluid that flowed through the body, giving it life. In particular, it flowed through the tiniest fibers of the body, which were like tiny tubes that were gathered together in bundles to form the nerves. These fibers were also contiguous with the blood vessels, which provided other, less fine fluids and materials that the body required for life. The finest of these fluids that flowed through the blood vessels he referred to as animal spirit. These were the next step down from the soul or the spirit itself. Swedenborg said that soul flowed from the cortical glands, which at the time had been invented in order to house this magical fluid. They were based on faulty early examinations of the brain. Swedenborg's treatment of them served as a crude early analogy to what we know today as neurons. Like neurons, the cortical glands were located in the cortex, or the outer layer of the brain, and in Swedenborg's view, they handled both sensation and motor control via the fibers running from them to all parts of the body. From these cortical glands, the soul flowed throughout these tiny fibers, giving the body its spark of life. Swedenborg thought when it came to procreation, well, things got a little bit weird. The male soul would flow to the nether regions, and there it would create a new tiny little soul that would then be passed to the female and grow into a new human. The scripturally based historical religions that originated in India include Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Sikhism. They hold nuanced and distinctive perspectives on the concepts of the soul. In a shared cultural environment, each tradition sought to relate itself to influential and established religions, yet to distinguish its own position with respect to these ideas. The soul was very convoluted when it came to all these different religious ideas. Well, the traditional accept all of the traditions except, oof, I'm listening to my cats over here hollering their heads off because somebody's got something that the other one wants. All the traditions accept the fundamental ontological premise that there is an animation and a vital incorporeal aspect of the human being, the presence of which distinguishes life from death. There was something in the body that made it alive. They just had different ideas on what that something might be. The status of the soul respect to life and death is the key issue. And in India, a dot not feather, traditions, this implicates the law of karma, which holds that actions have a residual force that has influence over an individual beyond the present lifetime and is thus a driving force behind the cycles of birth and rebirth. Now my cat's trying to eat my phone cord. Why do they have to be that way? This residual force of karma is never equated with a soul in Indian tradition. Liberation from this cycle, which all traditions define as the ultimate goal, is achieved by spiritual knowledge and practice as defined by each tradition. Oh, yeah. Now she's going to eat my phone cord. Western contexts are not found in Indian traditions. Indian religions invest the concept of the soul as a life force with their own distinctive meanings. A major difference between classical Indian and Western traditions is the Indian tradition critique of the individual state is their visions of spiritual liberation. In Indian religions, embodiment ordinary bodily embodiment is the individuality state that acts and thus gives rise to karma. Since spiritual liberation is defined as the cessation of karma and thus release from the cycle of birth and rebirth, the individuated state in which one produces karma is dissolved with spiritual liberation. This means not only that the body is dissolved, but also the individual state of life force or soul. There is no philosophical developed idea of personification, individually identifiable soul that continues to exist in an eternal afterlife in Indian religions. Their common ground is that in their imagining of the achievement of spiritual liberation, which is freedom from karma and the cycle of birth and rebirth, the individuation characteristic of ordinary embodiment is dissolved. Eastern religions generally hold that the soul has always existed and that it passes from one body to another. This is not based on Greek philosophy, but on Eastern sacred texts such as the Bhagavad Gita. The Indian traditions tend to envision the path of spiritual liberation in epistological and devotional terms. Epistemological relates to the theory of knowledge, especially with regard to its method, validity, and scope, and the distinction between justified beliefs and opinions. Devotional means relating to religious worship or activities, writings, or objects. There is an exception to the general rule in Indian tradition that individuality is incompatible with the achievement of spiritual liberation. There is a special category of embodied, perfected being who is spiritually liberated. In Indian tradition, one can be perfectly spiritually realized and yet remain in a living body, though it is understood that this is a very rare thing. This is not an ordinary instance of embodiment, although they do act in the world. Each Indian tradition has its own nounce in describing the nature of the perfected being, but they have in common the assertion that perfected beings have a holistic vision of truth beyond the ordinary limitations of humankind. This category of perfected being generally describes religious leaders such as a guru in Hinduism, the Buddha in Buddhism, the Jina in Jainism, and the Gurus in Sanskrit. Indian traditions pose distinctive philosophical questions with respect to the concept, including whether the soul is temporary or permanent, whether it is autonomous, whether it is real or not, whether it is subject to karma or not, and whether it is personal or universal. The overwhelming evidence of profound differences between Indian and Western ideas of the soul has led to many questions. The applicability of the term to Indian traditions to the extent of influential classical Sanskrit term Atman, which is most commonly believed to correspond with the Western notion of the soul, but it is no longer translated as being a soul by modern translators. Boy, howdy. I think I need a nap after all of that. Instead of translating it to soul, it is now termed self. Self concerns personality, karma, and self awareness in defining the nature of humankind. The main drawback is the Western tendency to equate self with ego, which is unfortunate because Indian traditions offer the profound and consistent critique of the ego as a limited materialistic obstacle to true spiritual knowledge. And now my cat is screaming at the back door. She wants to go out and find a boyfriend. I say, nay, nay, no boyfriend until he has a job. Like a lot of concepts from around the world, trying to squeeze one philosophy into another does not work. Some words or ideas just don't translate. For me to understand some of these ideas, I simply shut off the Western notion of the soul and self and try to think of these as a form of soul that I don't fully understand. I don't really understand the soul, but I do have my ideas on what it is and how it works. The Vedas are some of the earliest oral and written texts in Indian religious traditions. Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism reject the Vedas as a foundational scripture, but do acknowledge some of these ideas as being true. Kind of like how the King James Bible and the NIV or the New International Version Bible don't have the same information in them. Some books are missing, some have been added, it's a mess. And yet everybody will swear their Bible is the right one. In early texts, the Buddha is represented as a teacher who places the greatest emphasis on human condition as it is experienced here and now. A famous example is the metaphor of a wounded man thinking about what just might happen and not doing anything about it. The story goes like this. It is as if a man who has been wounded by an arrow that is smeared with poison, he would say, I will not have this arrow removed until I have learned the name of the man who shot it, the clan to which he belongs, and whether he is tall or short. The wounded man is so wrapped up in thinking about being shot, he does nothing about it. To me, this falls in line with the old tree falling in the woods. It makes a sound because that's how our world works. Philosophy is fine if you're independently wealthy or retired. Kids studying philosophy are looking at a career, asking folks if they want fries with their meal. I can't think of a single job that requires you to contemplate if the cat in the box is alive or dead. Just go look in the box and find out and stop thinking about it so much. In ancient Hinduism, the soul was called the Atma, and the basic Buddhist view was described as the Anatman, or no soul. A soul is considered to be something at our core that is single, independent, and unchanging. The Buddha said that all phenomena, including us humans, are conditioned, and all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Far from being single, independent, or unchanging, we are made up of many parts, a product of causes and conditions, which are constantly changing. Buddhism does say that we have an essential nature that transcends conditioned and material existence. Buddha nature is said to be the empty of all concepts of self and identity, as well as birth, death, time, space, etc., to be anatman, if you will. Hun and Pu are types of souls in Chinese philosophy and traditional religion. Within these ancient soul dualism traditions, every living human has both a Hun spiritual, ethereal Yang soul, which leaves the body after death, and also a Po, corporeal, substantive Yin soul, which remains with the corpse of the deceased. Some philosophers and religious scholars say there may be more than just these two souls. Taoism proposes a soul structure of three Hun and seven Po. The concept of the souls vary widely across East African countries, which different ethnic groups attribute unique meanings and significance to these essential aspects of human existence. In many Eastern African traditions, the soul is seen as the essence of a person, often referred to as the nyama, or spirit. It is believed to be the life force that animates the body and persists beyond physical death. East African beliefs posit a dual relationship between the soul and the body. While the body is the physical form that houses the soul, it is the soul that gives life and purpose to the body. Upon death, the soul separates from the body, embarking on a journey that defines its fate in the afterlife. The Kikuyu of Kenya believe in a soul that is both individual and communal, linking ancestors to descendants. The Maasai view the soul as a vital force that can influence the living world even after death. The Swahili culture incorporates Islamic beliefs, introduced concepts of judgment and resurrection. Creation stories serve as foundational legends that explain how the world and humanity came to be. In East Africa, these narratives often involve deities, ancestral spirits, and significant natural elements. Various ethnic groups have their own creation stories with some common themes. The Banganda of Uganda tell of a god named Katonda who created the world and humanity from the earth. The Zulu creation story speaks of a supreme being, Unkulunkulu, who emerged from the reeds and brought life to the universe. Deities are often central figures in certain stories, acting as creators and sustainers of life. Ancestral spirits may also play a role. serving as intermediaries between the divine and the human world. The souls of the dead will move between gods and humans, passing on information that way. After death, the soul embarks on a journey that may include crossing a river or some other boundary to reach the afterlife, facing trials or judgment determined by one's actions in life, rituals and practices associated with death and mourning. The underworld is a significant aspect of the afterlife in East African mythology, often depicted as a realm where the souls reside post mortem. Each culture has its interpretation of the underworld, often described as a shadowy place where souls await judgment or reincarnation. In some traditions, there is a god of the underworld who judges souls based on their earthly deeds. Spirits of ancestors may act as guardians, guiding souls to their final resting place. Ancestral spirits are believed to have a vested interest in the welfare of the living and the deceased, often guiding souls to ensure they are welcomed into the afterlife. Reincarnation is often tied to the idea of the soul's journey through various forms. Some cultures believe the soul may return as another human or even an animal. Others see reincarnation as an opportunity for the soul to learn and evolve through experiences. The belief in reincarnation encourages ethical living, as actions in one life can affect the soul's fate in the next. Reincarnation is generally defined by the idea that the soul is temporarily housed in a physical body that exists in a physical world. When that body dies, the soul continues to exist. Then, after an undefined period of time, the soul enters another body to experience life again in the physical world. Indians, feather, not dot, also known as Native Americans, believe in a free soul. The whole politically correct movement was designed as a form of control. Get people all worried about saying the wrong thing to the point that they can't say anything. It's hard to voice your opinion without saying anything that just might be deemed as politically incorrect. Just to add to the confusion, political correctness can change overnight. It doesn't fall to the government to tell us what we can and cannot say. That whole First Amendment doesn't say anything about being offended. It falls on each of us to make the proper call on what we should say and then pay the consequences if we're jerks. Most Indians, feather, not dot, believe that while the soul is a part of the body, it's also separate. The soul is able to temporarily leave the body when you're asleep. The soul can leave the body when a person is in a trance or a vision quest. The soul can depart the body permanently when that body dies. Once the soul has left the body, it moves through the spiritual world before being reborn or reincarnated. Some tribes believe that one soul can incarnate into more than one body. Some believe it can incarnate into several. Multiple people can share one soul. You've heard the term soulmate. Others believe one person can have more than one soul. It is believed possible to have up to 5 souls in one body. I wonder about schizophrenics. I've had the opportunity to talk to a few of these folks who were living in another world. You have to walk a thin line when dealing with these people. It's not something that I can teach in an hour or even a couple of weeks. The big if is if, say, there is a person with several souls, all combined into one body, would or could they get into some kind of a conflict? Say there were souls that in the past fought and killed each other. What if you wind up with the soul of, oh, say, oh, what's his name from forget it. I was going to go into a great big long story about two people that fought each other, and now I can't come up with some names. Adolf Hitler and Eisenhower. Not really a good example, but say you had those two souls packed inside your brain, your body. Would that make you crazy? Many tribes agree that the soul's purpose continues in different physical manifestations. During one incarnation, the soul might be a brave warrior who really loves battle. Think George Patton. In another, they might come back as a mother looking to raise her kids in a peaceful manner. Can't think of any good examples of that, but there are some. Some say there is a waiting period before the soul is born into a new body, while others say that it happens immediately. Where the soul goes while waiting is the question. Some long, horrible waiting room with a TV that only gets one channel and the magazines are all distributed by some religious group. I have a warped imagination when it comes to these things. To me, heaven is not a cloud where you fly around thumbing on a harp. That is not my concept of heaven. Now, probably it would be more like a garden somewhere, and the soul could relax and unwind while preparing for the next big event. Once in the new host, it's a shame that most folks don't remember their past lives. There are numerous records on people who did remember, but most soon lose what few occurrences stayed with the soul after moving on. I can see how this could be a bad thing. Would you want a 3-year-old who remembers being Attila the Hun? In fact, I think I know a few of those. Somewhere in the back of the mind, or whatever it is that the soul uses to remember, there must be a file or a container holding all the memories from all the past lives. Once the soul has experienced everything it needs to become enlightened or whole or complete, it unleashes the past or it opens this file, and presto, the past lives all become one. I imagine that's got to be kind of exciting. The boys in the white lab coats will run and hide under a table and say bad things to anyone trying to talk to them about reincarnation. Et es verboten to even think such things, let alone discuss them. My pet theory on this has to do with the folks that think they own the world. You know, the elites. If reincarnation were proven to exist, it would seriously hinder their ability to act as overlords to some undermensch they are trying to suppress. If the folks with all the gold have a real possibility of being reincarnated into a family of commoners, it would probably drive them nuts. That whole thing about being born to rule or being born as an elite would kind of lose a lot of its force. This brings me to the theory of there being different kinds of souls, good and bad, kind and evil, yin and yang. You can probably guess which one of these the overlords have. Do all souls come from God? Maybe Mr. Scratch invented a few as well. Some tribes hold more specific beliefs on which souls are able to reincarnate. For example, the human Indians who are from the lower Colorado River Valley believe that only twins or people with deformities or disabilities can be reborn. They view those souls as visitors who will get the opportunity to be reborn in order to have a more normal life in the next one. Most Native American tribes have strong beliefs about the existence of spirits, the afterlife, and reincarnation. Some Indian cultures are shamanistic. They believe certain people have the ability to transition back and forth between the physical and the spiritual world. Inherent in this skill or gift is that the shaman can share messages from the spirits to the humans. Some tribes have more complex views about how souls reincarnate. Some believe in animal to human and human to animal reincarnation, while others do not. There are tribes that don't believe in reincarnation at all, such as the Lenape and other Delaware tribes in western Shoshone, Gashute, Ute, Paiute, and the Washoe. People of the Arctic tribes like the Inuit, the Caribou Inuit, the Tlingit, and the Hade share a common views on reincarnation and preparing souls for the afterlife. As animists, the Inuit believe that all things in nature, alive or inanimate, contain a spirit. They believe that when someone or something dies, its spirit passes over and continues into existence in the spiritual world. Animists are individuals who adhere to animism, a belief system that posits that all objects, places, and creatures possess a spiritual essence or soul. This must mean my pickup has a soul. The Inuit also believe that souls reincarnate within the same family. New babies born into the tribe are believed to be reincarnated from family members who recently passed away. They will refer to the baby as father or uncle or whomever they believe the baby was in a previous life. My brother died some time ago. My nephew's son was born on what would have been my brother's birthday, February 2nd. Yes, Groundhog's Day. When I saw the first photos of the youngin', I had to dig out some old photos of my brother. They look exactly the same. I waited to see if the youngin' would come out with any memories of when he may have been my brother John, but so far nothing. It's been a few too many years now, so maybe he just doesn't want to talk about it. The resemblance wasn't just slight, it was amazing. The Caribou Inuit give tribal children sometimes up to 15 ancestral names. This serves the dual purpose of protecting the child and extending the life of those who have already passed. While some might argue that naming is not the same thing as reincarnation, for the Caribou Inuit, names are not just names. They have deep spiritual associations. The Lingot and the Hatta of Alaska believe that burial methods have a strong impact on reincarnation. In addition, they believe that heat plays a vital role in the soul's proceedings to the afterlife. Cremation is typical in funerary processes. The Lingot and the Hatta also believe the soul of the cremated person settles near the warmth of the great bonfire in the afterlife. If the body of the person is not cremated, their soul will be left close to a drafty doorway where cold wind can get to them. They also believe the soul has different components. Its most physical aspect reincarnates as a newborn tribe member, while the more spiritual aspect remains in the spiritual world. The Gibson people of coastal British Columbia believe one soul can reincarnate into the bodies of several people at the same time. Multiple people can share a soul. The Gibson say that babies are the incarnation of close relatives who have passed. Parents say they can tell their baby is the reincarnation of a grandparent or a relative because that baby resembles that relative, sometimes sharing birthmarks or other forms of identification. The Dene, the First Nation of northern Alberta, whose name translates as ordinary people, also have specific views on reincarnation. Living in communities around the Bush River, the Mendare River, and the community of the Cheetah, they believe the soul has dual elements. While part of the soul resides in the afterlife, the other reincarnates into this world as a human. In this way, the Dene share similar views with the Tlingit and the Hatta. They refer to reincarnated people as those made again. The Algonquin tribes from New England view reincarnation as just one aspect of the afterlife. They believe in multiple souls or that a soul can exist in multiple places simultaneously. The Narragansett people of Rhode Island say a person can have 2 to 5 souls. When a tribe member dies, the other members would perform a Feast of the Dead ceremony. This occasion marks the setting of one soul free and on its journey to reincarnation. The second soul would travel onwards to the village of the dead, where life would largely resemble a recent version in human form. The Wyandot people are an Iroquois speaking tribe who hail from the northern shores of Lake Ontario. They believe it's especially important for souls of young children who die to be given a chance at rebirth. They do their best to assist in the child's soul reincarnation by carefully selecting a burial location. Traditionally, the tribe would bury the body along a well traveled pathway. Doing so would increase the chances that the baby's soul would enter a passing woman and be reborn again. Plains Indians from Mississippi River in the east to the Rocky Mountains in the west, Canada to the north, and Mexico to the south include the Arapaho, the Comanche, the Crow, the Sioux, and others. For these tribes, ideas about reincarnation are tied to the idea of soul completion. If a person meets an untimely death or they stray too far from their destined life path, their soul cannot complete its journey on earth. Thus, the soul must reincarnate until the journey is successfully completed. The Sioux of the Dakotas believe everything that is part of nature world is infused with a spirit. This includes humans, animals, plants, minerals, and even weather. They view the natural and the supernatural world as intrinsically linked. The natural world is full of reincarnated spirits in the forms of animals, rocks, plants, and even people. The southwestern tribes of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah all generally believe in the idea of reincarnation. There are some differences among each tribe's beliefs. The Zuni and the Mojave believe that spirits reincarnate 4 times, with each incarnation becoming more complex. They believe a soul begins as an insect and then reincarnates into 2 different animals. Lastly, the soul reincarnates as a human. The Hopi are also believers in reincarnation. Their belief system carries an uncanny resemblance to Eastern religions, including Hinduism and Buddhism. The Hopi have the concept like karma, whereby actions in this life have consequences that will affect the subsequent lifetime. They also believe the body has energy centers like chakras, as well as a primordial core energy like the Kundalini. The Apache put strong emphasis on proper burial. They believe this is essential to help the soul be free so that it can peacefully continue on to the afterlife. Some tribes believe humans can reincarnate into animals as well as other ways. They often view this order of reincarnation as a punishment for living a corrupted life or being a bad person. Now my cat's playing with my mic. The Yorick people of Northern California believe the souls of bad people are reincarnated as prey animals, rabbits, birds, and squirrels. The Wintunes, another Northern California tribe, believe the souls of evildoers reincarnate into grizzly. The Wyandots see the grizzly as an ill-tempered, dangerous animal. They forego grizzly meat for fear that they may absorb some of this negativity. The Wyandots still view the acts of reincarnation as the soul's opportunity to evolve to something greater. So there you have it. Lots of different aspects on what the soul is. Lots of folks do agree that the body has a soul, except for those people, and that the soul may or may not live on forever. The important thing is, don't let me convince you of what is true or not. Do a little research of your own. Become a citizen scientist. Do some reading, do some research. Now, I may have said a few things that aren't necessarily correct because I only have readings and research to base all this on. I do not live in an Indian tribe with certain beliefs. I have never been to India. I don't know anything about the Chinese ideas on souls, only what I've read. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, spread it around. Tell other people they should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. If you have a suggestion for a show you'd like to hear, or you've got a story that you'd like to pass on, you can contact me at strangethings@arcanasa.com. Until next time, see you then.
Are you coming to the tree where there strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.